evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliott Margolis, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And today we're going to talk about the debate that was earlier this week. Got me kind of cranky, and it got a lot of people kind of cranky, not because of, the debate itself and all the wind up coming to the debate, but because the bias that ABC put on the debate and how they treated Trump versus how they treated Harris, just incredible. Years ago, journalism was, this is what happened, make your own decision. Nowadays is, we don't really care what happened, vote Democrat. Oh, you noticed my shirt. Well, I can't tell you anything about the shirt except to say, if you'd like one, contact me via my email, which will be on the screen eventually, and I'll be happy to help you get a shirt. I have plenty of them. But, when you talk about have you had enough, I know that people don't like Trump because of two things. Number one, he's a loudmouth. Number two, the press tells you not to like him. They don't tell you why, but they tell you not to like him. Talk about the debate. Gail, you want to start talking about the debate? Because I could go on for the next half hour.
I know you could. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
I'm timing you.
Well, it started off rather poorly with the moderator asking Harris a question, which she totally ignored. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? She wouldn't answer that question. Instead, she went on a diatribe about her childhood and about being a middle-class child. Well, as it turns out, she exaggerates. Of course, she exaggerates and lies about a lot of things. But she was brought up in a rather affluent suburb of Montreal. She spent some time in the U.S., but for the most part, it was Montreal. So she started off with that. And you're right about the moderators. Come to find out, neither one of the moderators are really journalists. They're commentators. And they really don't know too much about journalism, nor do they know a whole lot about moderating a debate.
Let me interrupt for 1 minute, because
Sure.
there is being an investigation now about the moderators and whether they gave Kamala the questions
answers?
beforehand.
Okay. Yeah.
And it didn't really matter because she didn't answer any questions anyhow, but she knew
This
the
is
questions
true.
beforehand.
This is
Go
true.
ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I can't help it.
I'm used to it, especially from my friend here, but that's okay. Well, she spent most of the time talking about her background, which was, as I said, improvised, you might say, and talking about Trump. It's amazing to me how people, Democrats especially, whenever they start talking about anything political, it always brings Trump into the forefront. He is a powerful force. That is unquestionable. I think he knew ahead of time that he would be facing a lot of opposition, but 3 against 1, that's a bit much for a televised debate where millions and millions of people are watching. Did he get angry? Yes, he did. Who could blame him for getting angry? She lied about him. She brought up things that have been debunked, like the Russia thing, like Charlottesville, all of that, which anybody who follows the news or politics knows. It's all
And don't forget,
a lie.
October 6th was January 6th
January
was
6th.
debunked.
And they
as
blame
well.
him for it.
And they blamed him for it, but Pelosi admitted,
Yes, she did.
and it's on tape, that she admitted that she takes responsibility
Yeah.
for January 6th
Yeah.
because she had the opportunity to have more security, And not only did she have more opportunity to have more security, but Trump asked her to bring more security
Yeah.
in.
He
And-
asked her days before January 6th to
Yeah,
do it.
it was a
and she
number of days
refused.
before.
She
But
refused.
talk about the lies. You were talking about a couple of her lies,
Yeah.
okay? IVF was a lie,
Yep.
okay? Trump was a leader in trying to get IVF for anybody who needed it.
That's right.
2025 was a lie,
That's right.
okay?
He had nothing to do with 2025.
National sales
Absolutely.
tax was a lie.
Yep.
Crime is up, not down. She said it was down, not up.
Well,
Another lie.
It's interesting because I have had Democrats at Brooksby, where I live, tell me the same thing, and they read off this data. But what they don't include, or maybe they don't even know, is that in a lot of that data, some crimes are not even mentioned. So if you use statistics and don't include a lot of crimes, it's going to skew the numbers, of course.
And what was interesting was Trump was fact-checked, some say 5 times, others say up to 11 times.
Really?
She was not fact-checked at
Once,
all,
no.
in spite of these lies.
Yeah.
So, and you talked about the first question, you know, are things better now than they were 4 years ago? Well, I do have a chart that hopefully we'll get on the screen soon.
Okay.
That shows you how things are not better today than they were 4 years ago.
It's nice that you have a chart, but I think if you look around you at your friends and neighbors, relatives, or whatever, everybody knows things are not better.
But they won't admit it.
They won't admit it,
See, here's the other thing that's important, okay? Trump was not my first choice. He was not my second choice. He wasn't my third choice, okay? Why? Not because he didn't do a good job as president when he was president, but because he is a big mouth and because he's, quote unquote, not presidential, okay?
I'm not sure what that means anymore.
Well-
when you take a look at someone running for the presidency and Kamala Harris, who cackles and giggles and, you know,
Yeah.
puts on a whole, maybe an Emmy-winning performance like she did.
But what we have to do is we have to vote for the issues.
That's right.
And we're not voting for the person, we're voting for the issues. And when that chart does come up, you're going to see some of the issues, but let's talk about a couple of the issues, okay? One of them could be the migrants,
The border.
okay? The border, and the fact that the Democrats want the migrants, the illegals, and most of them are lawyers, so they should know what the word illegal means. They want the illegals to vote.
Yeah.
Okay? So, in other words, an illegal person is equal in power to you, a citizen.
Yeah. Well, they make it so that if the illegals come in, they can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and they can be registered to vote. And then it's a matter of, okay, you're registered to vote, and what happens in many states today, they can get ballots through the mail.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And I don't care what the Democrats say, this is what's going on. They don't want to believe it. They pretend it doesn't happen. Well, maybe a few of them vote. No, no, no. We don't know how many are voting.
Well, you know, do you know why we have the absentee ballots?
Yeah. It's supposed to be, started out to be for the servicemen
Right.
and women, or people who could not leave their homes
Right.
to go to the polls.
So why can't we just have absentee ballots and not voting by mail? I mean, first of all, you don't know who's going into the mailbox. I could very easily go into somebody else's mailbox, take something out, sign their name to it, and send it back in. I mean,
Well, even if they go to the person that's voting, and we have all these immigrants, these illegals, immigrants, not just immigrants, illegals I'm talking about, not people who are illegally. It goes to their place where they live. And many of them cannot even speak English, so they don't know what they're doing. But somebody else could get it, fill it out, and like you said, send it in. And once those ballots are received, once they take them out of the envelope, there's no paper trail because you don't put your name and address on the ballot. It's
Right.
on the envelope. And that's the sticky wicket, you might say. But
Yeah.
Democrats don't want to hear that. They want to pretend that this thing doesn't happen and it didn't happen in 2020 and it's not going to happen. We don't know that. We know that in many cities and states, they don't purge their rolls often enough. So you have, excuse me, you have hundreds of thousands of people who are still on the rolls that may have died, they've moved out of state, moved to another place. We don't know until they go through them. This should be done on a yearly basis and not just every 5 or 10 years. It's not enough.
Another issue that's important that, because Kamala didn't want to talk about, was the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, about 84 billion, billion with a B, dollars worth of military equipment is now being used against us
By the Taliban.
by the Taliban.
That's right.
There is no military person around has ever said that was a good move.
Well, you know, the sad thing is that, number one, Biden and Harris didn't tell anybody they were going to do it. Our allies that were over there didn't even know until shortly before it started to happen. They didn't know.
And we had 13 of our soldiers killed, not to
Blown
mention
up.
hundreds of others that were blown up. They went against the generals who advised them not to do that.
right.
And the generals did say that they needed to have at least 2,500 soldiers still there to not only to protect our citizens and make sure our citizens got out, which we sent the military out before our
First.
citizens. And keep in mind one very important thing. Kamala, has admitted that she was the last person to leave the Situation Room during these.
During
She
a
is
lot of time.
She was
things that happened.
responsible for these decisions.
And you know, they're using that and they're exaggerating it. First of all, when the caskets were returned to the United States, Kamala wasn't there. She was not present at that ceremony. The 13 Gold Star families were never contacted by either Kamala or Biden. But they were contacted by Trump. Trump has gone to see them. He's been with them. He was at Arlington Cemetery. This is 3 years later. This was a couple of weeks ago. He went to the cemetery by invitation by those families. And the Democrats turned that around and said he disgraced himself and the families. That's not true, because the families are now coming out and saying he did what we asked him to do. He came to us, he came with us, he helped place the wreaths near the graves, and they took some pictures. And in one picture, you see Trump. This was it from the news, with his thumb up. Oh, that was disgraceful, he shouldn't do it. When you see the whole picture, you see all the families beside him doing the same thing. And that's fraud. And that should not be allowed.
Let's talk about a couple of issues, okay? Trump says we're not going to have any tax on Social Security. Well, I've asked our congressman about that. Why are we being taxed on Social Security? Because that's double taxation.
Right.
Trump's going to eliminate tax on Social Security. There isn't a senior citizen out there that shouldn't vote for him for that reason
That's right.
alone. No tax on overtime.
Yes,
Enough said.
that's right. No tax
no
on
tax
tips.
on tips. Again, enough said. And you know, some people are going to say, well, if we don't tax these things, we're not going to have enough money for stuff. Well, you know, I'll tell you why that's wrong. When Trump was in office 4 years ago and he reduced taxes, the Treasury never had so much money come in. Because when you reduce taxes, people have more money to spend.
That's right.
And when they spend, they're paying taxes. So that's one thing. But let's take a look at Kamala on a couple of issues. Number one, she wants to give small businesses $50,000 to help them.
Yeah.
Okay, where's that $50,000 coming from?
From us.
Right, from us. Okay.
Well, what about the unrealized capital gains?
Yep.
What is that? Whoever would think up such a horrible thing?
How about giving money to kids to pay off their college loans? Wait a minute. Have you noticed how much college has gone up in the past few years?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Well, let's see. Harvard University, Northwestern University, take your pick university. Well, gee, if the government's going to pay back the loans, what the heck? We can increase the price.
That's right.
Because we'll get the money from the government.
Well, you know, a lot of these schools have huge endowments, such
Yeah.
as Harvard. And the government needs to go after them and say, look, you've got these huge endowments. Use it. Stop charging especially in this time of inflation, stop charging these students and their families $90,000 a year for a college education.
But if the government's going to pay it, why not?
Well, that's it. You
and
have
if the
to
government
stop
pays
spending.
it, you know, it's funny. Some people say, oh, gee, you know, the government's paying it. It's not going to cost me any money.
Like the government has money.
Yeah. I mean, where does the government get their money? From your taxes.
They never stop to think about it.
Right.
It's just the government, the government, the government.
Right.
We are supposed to be the government that's in our Constitution.
It's amazing. You know, people don't put two and two together, and that's one of the things, the problems with the press nowadays.
Yeah.
They don't put two and two together because they're incapable of thinking on their own.
Well, this is what has happened, whether it's through education, poorly educated people, the journalism schools are not doing their jobs, and certainly the teachers' colleges are not doing their jobs. We end up with adults who are not truly educated the way they used to be. Many of them have problems with reading and math. Do we see the government trying to do anything to make it better? Now, Kamala does not believe in school choice for parents. Trump does.
That's another thing, right? School choice. The education system in our country is down the toilet.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's terrible.
And school choice, you know why school choice is important? School choice is important because it creates competition.
That's right.
And when you have competition, you're better. That's why if you go to a shopping center and you see 4 or 5 different jewelry stores, for argument's sake, why would you have 4 or 5 jewelry stores in a shopping center?
Sure.
Because it creates competition, it brings more people in, and they all stay in business.
That's right.
Well, charter schools, the reason why the unions don't want charter schools is because the education is so much better in charter schools.
At a lesser price.
Well, it's still a charter school is a public school.
It's a public school, but they don't get the funding that the public schools get.
Right.
They get a portion of that.
Right.
And what they
But
do
there's
is,
better education.
and they don't have these beautiful, huge buildings. Many of them are not beautiful, but they're new. They tear down the old school, put up a new one, and everybody says, oh, we have a new school in our community. Must be great. Well, it's all a facade.
There's a theory that if it's a new building and a new school, the education will be better.
Yeah.
So that means Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, USC, UCLA, take your pick. All those schools give you a horrible education because their buildings are old. And you can't learn in an old building. Another interesting thing, consumer debt. Under Trump,
yes.
consumer debt was low,
Yep.
okay? People were able to pay bills. They were making more money. More women, more minorities had jobs. Everything was going in the right direction. Now, 4 years later, okay, consumer debt has hit 5 trillion. That's with a T.
Yep.
$5 trillion in consumer debt.
Well, the problem is that we have inflation. It's coming down a little bit, but wages have not kept up with the rate of inflation. So when you go to the grocery store, you look at how much money you have, and every couple of weeks you look, wait a minute, I could spend the same amount of money last week and get a lot more for my buck. You can't do that anymore. The prices of food have skyrocketed. And don't blame the grocery stores. The grocery stores work within a very slim margin.
About 2%. But let me explain why grocery stores have gone up in price and why everything has gone up in price. And I hope that they can find that chart that I put up. It shows you that the consumers are paying about 38% more for food than they were 4 years ago. But here's the thing. When Trump was president, we were energy independent. We were buying oil, having oil from our country. Now we're getting it from our enemies in Venezuela, in Russia, some of the Arab countries, and we're paying more money for it. Well, you know what happens when you pay more money? Gas goes up in price.
Yeah.
You're seeing that in the gas stations every day. True. Now, gas goes up in price. How do we get our products? By truck. How do trucks work? By gas. Okay?
Well, yeah, but don't forget that the Democrats have a solution for that. We won't use fossil fuels anymore. We'll make everything electric. Okay, what about an electric car or an electric truck? Can you imagine how long it takes? Number one, you charge up your truck. It doesn't go very far.
And how was electricity created? Through fossil fuels.
Right. We're sitting on fossil fuels that could carry us for hundreds and hundreds of years. The first thing that Joe Biden and Harris did when they took office, he went in and he canceled a whole lot of things. He canceled the policies at the border, the pipeline that Russia used. He canceled everything.
Well, it was the pipeline that we were using, but he allowed Russia to have theirs.
He allowed Russia to have theirs. That's right.
Excuse
me. But in the meantime, here's the signature. We watched him with all these folders. I'm not sure he even knew what he was signing. And look what happened. Everything started to fall apart. And they covered it up. The media helped them cover it up. And at first, we didn't see the results. Now, almost 4 years later, we've seen the results. We've been living with it for the last 4 years. And Trump's tax cuts for the rich, it wasn't tax cuts for the rich. It was tax cuts for everybody.
But you talk about tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah.
First of all, that's a lie, another one of the lies. But secondly, how many poor people that you know hire people? How many poor people build buildings?
Yeah.
How many poor people do anything to create revenue? Okay, it's the rich people. So if you, Andrew Carnegie, he wasn't poor, but there's the Carnegie Foundation. There's the Ford Foundation. There's so many different foundations that are designed to help people. Yeah. Poor people don't have those foundations.
And the middle class is disappearing. We're becoming poorer and poorer. The middle class is so healthy and important for our country and our world. They're the ones that start these small businesses. They start out small and they grow. They can't do that anymore. They can't even start them up. Many of them have had to close. During COVID, a lot of them closed and could never reopen again. They couldn't afford it. And they lost all that money during COVID because of this administration's policies during COVID. And that just kind of opened the door for them to continue doing their drastic things that they do. I mean, we've got to make changes. We have to take these people, and many of them are incompetent. Look at the wars that we're involved in.
Well, there weren't any wars during Trump, okay?
That's right. And he
but the
wanted to-
Democrats, by the way,
Yeah.
are responsible for the war in the Middle East.
Yep.
And you're going to ask me why. I'll tell you why, now that you asked. We gave, Obama and Biden gave money to Iran. What did Iran do with the money? They gave it to Hezbollah, they gave it to Hamas to make weapons. Weapons are what kills. So we're talking about the Democrats who are totally 100% responsible for the war in the Middle East, because without the war, without the weapons, there would be no war. So, and do you ever hear Schumer, who's allegedly Jewish, say anything about any of the anti-Semitism that's going on with the Democrats?
And here we go back to that again, because over the years, we've known each other for a long time, and we've talked about the Jewish people in this country and how they always, many of them always vote Democrat. And now when we had this horrible thing happen in Israel, for the first week, people were saying, oh, this is terrible, poor Israel, blah, 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 blah. But many of them hate Netanyahu. So a couple of weeks later, they were blaming Netanyahu in Israel for retaliating against Hamas, the terrorists. You know, it's so convoluted. We need a clear-thinking person to run the show. Clearly, Biden isn't it, and clearly, Kamala is not it either. They're not clear-thinking. They don't know. They, frankly, for all their so-called experience, they don't have a clue. They don't understand the American people. They don't understand what we want, that we don't want to be given things. We want to find jobs, good-paying jobs, and we want to do it ourselves. And we want our children to be protected.
Gail,
right now, they're not.
Say goodbye.
Well, I guess our time is up. So I will say goodbye and thank you for watching. Goodbye, Elliott.